Okay. Good morning. My name is Dave Dykman. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us for the final day of the Cornet Carolinas mega event. This morning's session is how Siemens is using workplace technology to safely return 100,000 employees. A very relevant topic for today. Before we start, I'd like to remind everyone to keep yourselves on mute. Questions are welcome and encouraged, but please submit them through the chat function and they'll be addressed during the program. Today's session is being recorded and will be shared by the chapter after the event. Cornet Carolinas would like to thank our sponsors. Our 2020 Diamond sponsors are CBRE, DPR Construction, and JLL. We also thank our annual sponsors. Your support of the Carolinas chapter is greatly appreciated. This year's mega event sponsors are Alfred Williams & Company, CBRE, C-Design, LS3P, McVeigh & Magnum Engineering, and Turner. And now we'll hear from CBRE, our sponsor for this session.
Hi, I'm John Christenberry with CBRE. CBRE is a proud sponsor of the award-winning Carolinas Cornet chapter. CBRE is the world's largest commercial real estate services firm with more than 100,000 employees globally. In the Carolinas alone, we have more than 900 professionals who have local expertise in nearly every industry from banking, retail, healthcare, data centers, logistics, manufacturing, to provide specific expertise and advice that enables our clients to develop and manage and exceed organizational goals for their real estate portfolio. We would greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak with you about how CBRE can bring real advantage to your business through the real estate and investment services we offer.
Thank you, John. Before I turn it over to Hunter, we want to remind everyone of two upcoming chapter events. First, on October 8th, there's a virtual buildings tour and real estate strategy discussion. End users in the Triangle market will walk through newly constructed office space. And the virtual core awards will take place on November 5th. Registration opens this Monday, October 5th. Please register. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce Hunter Fleshwood, Head of Client Partners for Comfy.
Thank you, David. And thank you to our sponsors and the Mega Event Committee for what's been a fantastic week of sessions so far. I hope you've had a chance to enjoy some of them. And welcome to all of you today, and thank you for joining us. As David said, I'm Hunter Fleshwood. I'm a member of the Cornet Carolinas board, and we are really glad to be part of this year's virtual mega event. I also serve as head of new business sales for Comfy, a Siemens company. Comfy provides CRE technology to enterprise companies to enhance the employee experience, to ensure a safe and healthy workplace, to make data-driven portfolio decisions, and to optimize building performance. In today's session, we'll share how Siemens is using workplace technology to safely return 100,000 employees in 600 locations across 50 countries. I have two of my teammates with me today to share this story. Owen Glubiak leads global customer success for Comfy and is also responsible for deploying Comfy to Siemens' global portfolio. Owen's prior experience is in energy management and renewable energy programs. He's a certified energy manager and is based in Boston. And Wes Krutzinger is global leader in Siemens CRE organization. He leads major international programs and provides real estate guidance for Siemens M&A transactions, including the recent spinoff of Siemens Energy. Prior to Siemens, Wes was with EY, where he advised corporate real estate organizations and institutional investors. Wes has lived and worked in the US and UK and now lives in Munich. Welcome, gentlemen, and over to you.
Thanks, Hunter. Appreciate the time this morning and hailing all the way from up north. So good morning, everyone in North Carolina. I want to kick it off with talking a little bit about this partnership between Siemens Real Estate and Comfy or Smart Infrastructure, the division that we're part of here. All of this was kind of accelerated due to the crisis with COVID-19, as many of you have experienced. And when things started to really hit us in March, that's when we had to quickly devise a solution together. And so we prioritized scaling across the globe as our number one priority, and returning employees safely to the workplace. But it didn't really just focus on things that were sort of old school ways of tracking things by paper. We wanted to have a digital foundation. As we're Siemens, we have a lot of digital force behind our name. And so our workplace technology is fundamental to our core values. And that's what we focused on, and spreading this across to different locations globally. With this, it was meant to achieve sort of this new normal working model, and laying out the foundation for this new normal, starting with what was easy and scalable, and then going up to what's the more complex things, and how can we localize this as much as humanly possible. And I want to focus on this one kind of headline here, where workplace technology is an enabler. We truly believe that to our core at Siemens, and that's something that I want to talk a little bit more as we're looking at the global scale of it. And I'll hand it over to Wes to kind of review what it means to be scaled at Siemens, and the size that we were dealing with.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Appreciate it, Owen, and thanks, Hunter, for the introduction. Glad to be here today. So I think before we can really talk about what do we mean by rolling out a workplace tool to our company, we have to first understand the size and scale of the Siemens real estate portfolio. So currently, worldwide, we have over 8 million square feet under management, and more than 2,400 people within the real estate organization, serving more than 300,000 Siemens employees worldwide. I think one of the important things to also share here is that due to the size and scale of the Siemens real estate business, we have a P&L. So we have a mandate from Siemens to create value for the company, and we do that through a number of different initiatives. But as far as our tenants and our employees go, that's through creating a workplace that is somewhere where they can really work and operate, but then also where we create a more efficient environment for them to work, and that's where these workplace tools come into play. So with that, then if we drill down a bit more, thinking about our portfolio of 1,200 locations, that's pretty evenly split between office and industrial, white collar and blue collar workers, owned and leased. So what we really wanted to do, coming out of the COVID crisis and managing that crisis, is be able to very quickly deploy a workplace tool where we can manage the health and safety of our employees in those locations. And so very quickly, the leadership of Siemens came together with a clear view of making sure that we are able to ensure that health and safety. And so we have rolled out in a very short time the Comfy Workplace application to more than 600 locations across 50 countries and 100,000 employees. And as you can imagine, with that kind of scope, there's really two challenges with that, and that's speed and scale. But maybe we can break it down a little bit more, because I think when you have a project of that size and that magnitude and speed, you need to break it down to really understand the challenges in each step of it.
Hey, Wes, so, just if you wouldn't mind, just going back to that location side of things, because I think one area that was really interesting in this whole process was the site selection. We went and we kind of identified, and this was primarily done by the real estate group, was identifying those initial locations. But we had to build in some flexibility for ourselves, as we inevitably were going to miss one of the 1,200 locations, right? That just wouldn't be part of this initial scope. So I think what was a testament to like our real estate team was actually the ability to build in capacity for ourselves to identify new things like, hey, out of the 1,200 locations, what leases are coming up and are going to be expiring? How do we make sure we have a process that we can add in sites and remove sites as we go? So I just wanted to make that quick note, because that was important, is to build that flexibility into this whole process, since it was such a massive undertaking for both our groups.
Yeah, that's a good point. And to do that, you have to have a good understanding and good visibility of your portfolio. And that's why having teams located all across the world, we were able to really drill down and identify the sites that would be the biggest value add to having this kind of capability. So I think if we look at the phases that we've gone through, you know, this, as everyone's already aware, was born out of the crisis management of the COVID pandemic, and making sure that our employees were healthy and safe in the workplace. And so from an initial phase, of course, that was really the key challenge in that phase one, is making sure that everyone was healthy and safe in the workplace. And the nice thing, I think, that really proved valuable, and maybe a silver lining here, was that it was crystal clear to the Siemens management up and down the chain that this was something that needed to be addressed quickly. So one of the silver linings was just the buy-in of management. And I think that was so important from an early stage, to make sure we had the right tools and resources, the right people in place to manage those topics. Second step, and where we are shifting to now as we come out of the crisis management phase, is the return to the workplace. And of course, you know, that presents new challenges, and the challenges there really, again, still keeping people safe and healthy, and probably even a bigger topic now, as there will be more people in the workplace than there were 3 months ago or 6 months ago. And but also making sure that the tools that we roll out are interesting and valuable to our Siemens employees. And we'll go into that a little bit more, but we really had to think beyond just the COVID topic to really a bigger picture of, you know, thinking about how do we create something that people will use and adopt, and what is the overall strategy and vision. And then, of course, the third phase will be once people are back in the office, and there will be this new normal, whenever that really will be. And again, having a long-term viable product, because that is, you know, while it's tied and connected to the crisis management, it's also a different topic. You know, the things that you need for long-term viability and daily operation are not necessarily the same thing that you would need in the short term. So it has to have short-term value and long-term value. So maybe we can talk about some of these features as we go through the phases.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I can kind of pick up the phase approach. Oops, sorry, go ahead, Hunter.
No, the phases are great. I think everyone can relate to them. It's hard to believe that this crisis management phase started nearly 7 months ago. And for me and for many of you, I know that meant, where am I going to work? How am I going to work? How's business going to proceed? Those of you in corporate real estate were caring for your employees and making sure they had the technology and the space and the tools they need. But so crisis management, March, April, maybe you're still there, trying to resume business. Workplace reentry, as Wes said, start to bring people back, or really define your plans for bringing people back and how you'll do that. The new normal, I'm not sure anyone in North America has seen the new normal yet. Perhaps your company has. I know I have some colleagues and peers back in the office, some friends back in the office, but we really want to hear from the audience, sort of what phase you're in. So Amanda, if you could put the poll up. And based on the phase descriptions, crisis management, workplace reentry, and the new normal, please share with us where your company is. Pick one phase, submit your results. And Amanda, when you have a good sample of results, let's see what that looks like. Okay.
All right. Well,
Owen, what do you think about that?
that's an interesting result and pretty consistent with what you would think in terms of where we're at. It's at a point now where over the summer people were kind of gauging themselves up, getting ready for people to start entering back into the office. What's been fascinating about this whole experience, and I say fascinating, but it's sad at the same time, is you get such a varying degree of where people are at across the world, depending on how impacted their sites are. And it's good to see that people are in a phase where they're starting to bring people back in the office. So I think that's pretty consistent with what we see with, I would say, probably some of the eastern states in the U.S. The Western is in a different situation right now. But I'd say that's pretty consistent with what we're seeing. But you get varying degrees across the world of how people are returning back in, going from minimal capacity to we've now set thresholds and we've got teams coming in different approaches. So it's kind of case studies will be written about this whole experience, and it's going to be fascinating to kind of watch this as it progresses to figure out what's the best practices as we go. And a lot of learning, right?
Yeah.
So
Owen, you used the word sad, and unfortunately, I think 7 months into this, maybe at times we lose sight of that, but I noticed 11% say their company is still in crisis management, and beyond just maybe not being as productive as you'd like, there's still real impacts of this pandemic. And so I appreciate you using that word and reminding all of us it's a time for kindness and empathy. I was also surprised to see 17% in the new normal, and I welcome that. The more people can get back to the new normal, I think the better, and I think we all want that. So 17% in the new normal, interesting to see, and thanks everybody for sharing where you are. We'll do one other poll question related to that. So if understanding again the workplace reentry, starting to bring people back to the office and beyond just the essential critical functions that have probably been there all along or since April or May, when do you expect your company to begin bringing employees back to the office beyond the essential functions en masse, maybe in shifts and waves, but returning to what is going to be the new normal? Share your thoughts on where your company is, or where the clients are that you serve. Already coming back, expect to come back by the end of the calendar year. Maybe you say sometime next year. You may also be uncertain of that. And the stories we read about in the CEO comments, it varies from Netflix to JP Morgan and Google and others. It's sort of all over the map. What do we see? Wes, interested to hear your thoughts on this and how it compares to what you've experienced.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a pretty representative snapshot of what we see globally with our portfolio. I mean, if you look again at portfolio spread all over the world, different countries are in different phases of returning to the workplace. There's still uncertainty. I would say there might be a higher level of uncertainty within our Siemens real estate organization, because you just don't fully know. And I think that's one of probably the biggest challenge of COVID in general is just the uncertainty it causes in both the short, medium, and long term as a business trying to define your strategy, trying to operate within the risks and things of all of that, all of the unknowns, that's quite challenging. But I think this seems fairly representative with what we're seeing.
Thanks to the audience for sharing, and we'll move on. And Owen, talk to us a little bit about deploying the solution.
Sure, certainly. So what did it look like for us? Like, what were we trying to do? I mentioned it earlier that we were focusing on kind of the scale part. So we broke this whole process into two phases, phase one and phase two. Some of that coincides with both the crisis management and the workplace reentry side of things. So just know when I say phase one, I don't mean exclusively crisis management. It does kind of bleed into the workplace reentry or phase two part of it. So phase one was really designed to accomplish two main objectives. First is communication platform to employees, so that employees know where to go for resources in terms of what are the best practices in the office, and what are the policies that are set up, what's the company doing for me, and how do I know that the company is following local guidelines. And then the second part of this is compliance. So meeting the local capacity restrictions in the building itself. We did this very quickly, and that we know we needed to have a solution that was built, that was something we could roll out in mass, and that's what we focused on. So it was quick builds and creating what we have here, which is cards. So you can see, like on our homepage screen, you have these different cards which relate to different topics that are important to Siemens in this case. We wanted to have something that was both global in the message, so that if there was something we wanted to put out across all 600 sites that related to Siemens corporate, we could do so. But we also needed to have that flexibility for country or region, as well as the local level, to create their own customized solution to kind of relaying messages out to their particular people. So phase one was an interesting one because it wasn't turnkey. Now, this was not something that we had off the shelf. There were facets of it that we needed to custom build. And working together with Siemens Real Estate and other aspects of Siemens, we were able to get this out in, I would say, record timing to all these different locations. So that was really, really important for us is to have this flexibility as we're deploying and then building upon that. So it's a platform that you kind of have this foundation, it's built upon flexibility, and then you can add things to it over time to help improve the functionality and also adjust to whatever the situation is going on globally and locally for those particular areas. And as we transition into then what is that workplace reentry and new normal, we move into phase two. And phase two was one where we focused on more granularity in the workplace itself. And we wanted to make sure that we were providing a productive, valuable experience for employees as they're coming in. And why is that important? I think one of the main things that we kind of focused on was we didn't want people to get turned away at the door. Sounds fundamental, but if you're an employee who's like, all right, I've got this meeting, it's with 4 of my colleagues, it's this project we're trying to get done, we've got a deadline, and we know we've got to get this done in this particular time period, let's get in the office so that we can at least collaborate together for a few hours in the day. How do we make sure that we are sitting near each other so that we can just get this done? So the second phase of this was kind of helping our employees with these collaborative spaces and ensuring that they had a digital solution that made it easy for them. It's something they worked in the background, they didn't have to think about it. They could get up, use it while they're in the parking lot or in their driveway on the way to the office, or even as they're walking into the office itself. So, features like booking a desk out in the future, finding where your colleagues are sitting so you can sit near them, booking out spaces in conference rooms, all done through your mobile device and making it super, super easy. And then having that granularity in the data so that as people are using the application, and I'm going very heavily in the application, but really it's more about the data that you're getting off this to help Wes and the different members of the real estate team manage the capacity of the location, keeping it compliant, but also understanding how much of this is being utilized. I don't think it's a stretch to say all of your portfolios are going to be changing pretty dramatically over several years as you kind of adjust your new way of working, and you need data to do that. And so this second phase is designed to help lay the foundation of data and to build upon that so that you can make effective real estate decisions in the future. And that's ultimately what we're getting towards, is how can we give you the data that you need in order to make sure that you're able to make those decisions about not only just, hey, do I have too much space, but also, is this the right size conference room? Basics, right? So I think that's an important piece that we had overall when we're looking at the phase 2 side of things. So I know I went through those pretty rapid fire, but Wes or Hunter, if you want to add any comments to those, I certainly welcome it.
Yeah, maybe I can add some perspectives on some of the lessons learned as we went through these different phases. So as the global project manager on this, responsible for rolling this out across the portfolio, number one, it's been a really fun and interesting project in a very challenging environment. But I think, you know, there's been quite a few things that set us up for success, and quite a few things where we really had to think through what is the right approach. And first of all, you know, as we talked about earlier, looking at the different phases of crisis management through returning to the office, one of the things that became very clear is that if you're going to roll out a mobile application for the employees to use as a workplace tool, there needs to be a clear value proposition for the user. They have to understand it, and it has to be something where they find value in it, so that they will adopt it and use it into their daily work life. Because otherwise, all of this effort that we're putting in, if it doesn't get adopted by the users, it's kind of all for waste. And I think you know, we really had the backing of our Siemens management on this, so it was important to make sure that the company money went to good use. So what did that mean? I think, you know, this point, breaking down silos. So I'm a real estate guy, but in coming up with a solution that really creates a value proposition for the user, I had to step outside of my normal real estate silo, and we as a project team had to work together with our corporate communications teams, HR teams, IT teams, EHS, all of those, bringing together the different departments across Siemens, and the different attributes that they bring, really from that user perspective, because that's what they need in their daily work and those different touch points. So it's everything from the news feeds that they read on the company news. It is the desk booking and the safety notifications that come out of our EHS group. It is, you know, HR topics and being able to address those, and IT support. So really thinking about it from that perspective, the value proposition to the user is bringing together all of those things on one platform. The other thing I think has been helpful.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, the other thing that's been helpful with that is in having a platform approach where we can bring those together. It also allows us to be both scalable and customizable, so that we can continue to grow and enrich the user experience through additional content that we can add, but we can also address it to the specific needs of the local countries and the local offices, so that, you know, it can be in the language that they need. It can have specific content to what they want. If there's specific features that they need because they're returning to the workplace at a faster speed than, you know, another country, that there is that kind of flexibility and versatility in the platform to be able to address that. And so I think that has really been a key thing. But that's only possible by having the right team in place. And I think that's something that has proved to be really important to us. Again, having representatives and stakeholders across the different silos, and, you know, ownership from the management team, to where we make sure if something needs to get done, that it gets done from the very top level. So we have the members from the board, we have the chief technology officer, we have, the CEO of the real estate people, all of these people supporting this. And not only are they supporting it, but they're lending their voice to it. So, the communication channels that come out, they are also ensuring that this is seen as something that's important to the community. Because again, right now, it's about keeping people safe and healthy, and in the future it really is something that we hope is a great workplace tool that will continue to add value long after COVID is over.
And just to chime in, and apologies for interrupting earlier, that first bullet there is interesting, especially as the global leader for customer success within the group, the value proposition for the users. And this is an interesting one and a difficult one at the same time, because one of the things that's just totally different about this new way of working is it's no longer showing up at the office and just kind of sitting at the space that you sat at for years or decades. You're required to take a particular action before you come into the workspace itself, and getting people to change that mindset was difficult. And I think a lot of that was difficult because there wasn't a top, it would have been super easy for us to just have top-down approach, everyone using this going forward on this particular date. That's not how the world works. Like we said before, you have different phases in terms of where you're at. And so with a global portfolio, you have to assess, can I follow every single region and every single building and the local regulations and just where they're at with the crisis. So in order to do that, we had to make this so that these were tools that you're providing to the local levels and helping them enable this for their own people so that they could apply this as they need to and have that flexibility to do so, which meant that you're giving that value proposition for the users when they need it at the same time. So I think that's just an important point to bring up, because as we were deploying this too, it did make a big difference in terms of how we were deploying this and when we were deploying it to different users. And it really came down to the different locations across the world being able to make those decisions for themselves so that they could treat their own people with what they needed at that time.
Thank you, Owen. So I've been in CoreNet for a long time. As an end user, as a service provider in niche technologies. And one of the things I've loved about CoreNet through the years is hearing what other companies are doing to tackle problems or to stay ahead of trends. And the purpose of today was sharing that. And I hope you receive some value in hearing how a multinational company uses technology to safely return people to work. I know that your companies and your clients are grappling with the same thing. I know that you use technology to enable any sort of workplace initiative. And we shared some of how some of the technology we're using and how we're using it for our last poll question. And before I get to that, a reminder, we're going to do Q&A in the chat in about 5 minutes after this poll question. But for our last poll question, we want to hear how your company is using technology to support a safe and healthy return to office, and check all that apply here. Communicating critical information, managing shifts and schedules for returning people, collecting employee health attestation. I don't have COVID, I haven't traveled, I haven't been around people with COVID. Office check-in and admittance protocols, reserving desks and rooms that you know are clean. And if there's some other technology, or if you're using technology to support some other function, what does that look like? And share that in the chat. And Amanda, when you see enough results in, share when you're ready. Give people some time. Wow. So what I see here is communication is key. And in times of uncertainty, in times of maybe a little fear and certainly confusion, when can I come back? Where do I go? How do I get tools to work from home? If I'm coming back, at what time? Is it going to be crowded? What do I need to bring? Where am I going to sit? Those are some of the things that we've communicated, and looks like communication has been critical. The two lower scores here, shift and schedule management and collecting employee health attestation. You know, for us, I think those become more important when the people are ready to enter. You tell them exactly what time and you ask a series of questions, and maybe our audience isn't at that point yet. But some interesting results. And again, if you used or are using technology to support some other element of returning to the office, drop that in the chat. We can drop these results, and we're going to move next to open Q&A. There's a couple of questions in the chat already. If you have others, drop them in the chat. We'll come back to them. Let me stop sharing. Get in gallery view if you like. And I'm going to start off our Q&A with a couple of questions myself, and I'll start with you, Owen. One of the learnings that Wes shared was to have a plan that works globally, but to be flexible to local needs. Do you have any examples where you sort of flexed the plan or adjusted for a certain country, region, or location?
Yeah, so many, right? And Wes can speak to that. I think we both have gotten more gray hairs significantly from this project as we're adapting. I think the best example I have is actually, it came in May when UAE it adjusted some of its local compliance rules and started to bring people back in like 2 weeks. So several Siemens offices in UAE, and we focused on two of the larger ones in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And what we did was they needed more strict ways of measuring compliance and the capacity level, and needed to report on that. Otherwise, it was a pretty big fine. So in order to do so, you know, we kind of accelerated our phase 2 features and only did portions of it, and did kind of a rolling launch as part of that to meet those local requirements, but also give people the tools they need to get people back into the office. It was low capacity. It was like 25–30% capacity, but it just allowed it to be a really simple experience for employees to come back in, just booking through our application. But it also, and most importantly, made sure that we were giving the real estate team and different members of that organization the data they needed to ensure that they were being compliant if any regulators came knocking on the door. So that was a tricky situation, because it was kind of one of those like panic moments where you needed to put something out there quickly and make sure that you're meeting a compliance requirement in a very, very short window. And we were able to kind of adjust our schedule and take things and make it work for them.
Thanks for sharing that.
I would add one of the challenge actually to highlight on a project like this, and something maybe that real estate folks don't always think about, are all of the approvals that you need to be able to roll out these kind of tools. So thinking about cybersecurity, data privacy, worker council topics, and legal. And especially with a global portfolio, we have different topics in different countries that require, you know, a different level of focus. And so that can really be one of the pitfalls, and you have to think about how can you get something out there quickly but still be compliant with all the topics so you don't get yourself in trouble. And so, you know, in the beginning, I sit in Germany right now, and Germany's probably the poster child for worker council topics and other stuff that it's hard to get all of that up through. So a lot of red tape. So with that, we've had to do quite a few pilot locations where we could kind of get some kind of provisional approval so that we can still get some of the workplace tools out there to manage capacity to keep people safe while we're also trying to get all the approvals and, check all the boxes.
Thank you, Wes. Hey, thank you everyone that's sharing your video. I sort of feel like I'm at the mega event now. It's just great to see people and feel like I'm at a Cornet Carolinas event. So thanks for doing that. I'm going to go to the chat now. Michael Morgan, thank you for sharing this question, which is interesting. And I'm going to pose it to you, Wes. Do employees need to provide health status on a daily basis before entering the office?
Yeah, I would say that we don't require it. It's that we do have a health check feature on there where that is possible. But again, with the global portfolio, we actually find that country by country, there's different rules and different limitations. So we kind of leave it up to whatever is the kind of the policy within that country.
Yeah, going back to your workers' council topic, that was an interesting one. It was like, okay, we're ready to launch this, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, we gotta check this. I think it was Germany that actually pumped the brakes on the health check status, whereas other countries like, we absolutely need this right now. This is compliance. We need to get this out. So that was an interesting situation, particularly with that feature, as it was needed and required in some countries, and other ones were very much like, we need to go through an approval process. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right, Wes. I mean, the local part of that was needed, and I'm glad it wasn't a central decision that came out of that we allowed that flexibility.
It can be sensitive. Health attestation is new vocabulary for me, but I have to do it now to get in the gym. Taylor Breedout shared a cool example that his company uses. So to admit into their office, they do the temperature check to the forehead, presumably, and if they pass their health attestation at the door, they get an armband. And I think that's interesting. That's a visible sign to others that you're interacting with that I'm healthy, and can help, just minimize any sense of discomfort or fear. Going back to the chat, here's a question. Were changes to the workplace or new protocols communicated through the app? Owen, you want to start on that?
So I was gonna say Wes is probably best suited to start that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll take that one. I think, communication at the local level is very much within our jurisdiction within the real estate organization. And so I would say that is one of the features that the location managers at the sites find most useful, to have push notifications and make sure that they can communicate to their the people who work in their location. So that's absolutely one of the most valuable features. And I think for me personally, I get inundated with emails and I get inundated with other things. Having something on my phone where I can quickly see what is kind of the relevant communication specifically for my location, I find useful, because otherwise it gets buried with our corporate social media tool or email or other stuff, and I don't see it. So I think that's one of the more valuable pieces. And just wanted to mention, Hunter, you talked about it's great to see all the people on here. I find that great too. It's kind of cool to see everybody sharing their videos, and it feels a little more real. And the only sad thing is we don't get to have the happy hour afterwards. So next time we'll have to bring cocktails. Of course, it's the afternoon in Germany. I guess it's 8 a.m. and in the U.S., so maybe a bit early for you guys.
You're in Oktoberfest mode, Wes, a little ahead of us, but mimosas and Bloody Marys would do just fine right now. And I would like to stay and have that social part, discuss this topic and open it up and hear from you. Unfortunately, I think we are going to need to conclude. I'm going to do one more question. And Blake, thank you for this. This is a great, I think, question and thought to conclude on. So Blake writes, right now we're focused on health and safety, that crisis management, return to workplace. How are we using technology, and most importantly, the data, to help shape what the future looks like? to use it so that once we have a better handle on the virus and the safety, what technology is being used, what data is being collected to help us predict what that new normal might be.
Yeah, so I
and
can
maybe
take that one because that's
okay.
yeah, definitely. That's you know, one of my key things is making sure that we build out our back end data structures and data pipeline to then produce analytics off of that through, you know, name that BI tool, right? So as we're looking at this, a few things have come to mind, and that is you've got your portfolio view overall in terms of how to manage just the overall capacity in buildings and is it being utilized, but then you have your individual spaces and how things will be shifting around. So we've done is the ability to kind of build in this kind of fluctuating space. You maybe an office was an office before, but you want to make it a more collaborative space. And so tracking capacity in the particular rooms and what people are searching for is one of those things. So we're using the data not only at the portfolio level, but also what is interesting to individuals as they're coming into the office. What size conference rooms are important to them? What desks are they booking together? How are they looking for their other coworkers? There's different pieces and elements of the data that need to be collected so that you can understand what is it that employees require that you can't get maybe through a survey, that you can actually get through their actions that's going to help you make those decisions on how to structure your spaces, both at the portfolio level, but then also locally within the building itself, and shifting that around to make it more collaborative and productive for them.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to that we are, as Siemens Real Estate, going through an analysis of the portfolio right now, a portfolio optimization analysis where taking into account what this new normal will look like and bearing in mind there's still a lot of unknowns due to COVID, but I think one of the key messages from our tenants, our Siemens tenants, is that there will be probably less space needed in the future as more people work from home or they work more flexibly. So having a workplace tool that can help manage that, I think is going to be critical, because as you can imagine, if you consolidate more people into less space and people are working in shifts or coming in different days of the week, if you don't have some way to manage that in a very easy and user-friendly way, it's going to be chaos. I think also the customers or our tenants, our Siemens tenants, will also find value in being able to have a better transparency on how is their space used, how often are there people coming in, and they'll be able to make better decisions on their space requirements in the future based on that kind of analytics.
Owen and Wes, thanks for spending time with us. The participants on today's session, thank you for your great questions, for participating in the poll, and for listening. And again, we're happy to be part of this year's mega event. David, if you could give a final thought.
Absolutely. Well, Hunter, thank you, and thank you to Owen and Wes. Thank you to all our attendees. Your good questions. Thank you, of course, to the sponsors, and we look forward to seeing everyone at the Virtual Core Awards. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks
so
a lot.
much, everybody.